Every night at exactly 9 o'clock, Mr. Aldrin Vale carried a silver tray down the eastern corridor of Hawthorne Manor. On the tray sat one porcelain cup, one saucer, one folded napkin, one spoon, and tea prepared exactly the same way every evening. Earl Grey, 2 drops of honey, no milk, no sugar. Too hot to drink at once, warm enough to be touched by living hands. The servants hated watching him do it, not because tea was strange, but because of where he carried it. At the far end of the eastern corridor was the Rose drawing room, a chamber no guest used, no servant cleaned after sunset, and no fire was ever permitted to die in. Its curtains were always drawn, its lamps were always lit, and beside the fireplace sat a high-backed velvet chair turned slightly toward the window. An empty chair. Mr. Aldrin served tea to that chair every night. He entered alone, set the cup on the small table beside it, bowed, then said in his calm, polished voice, "Your tea, my lady." Then he left. No one knew why. At least, no one admitted knowing. The younger maids whispered that the butler had lost his mind after Lady Seraphina Hawthorne died. The footman said the chair belonged to the first countess, who had vanished before her portrait could be finished. The cook believed there was nothing ghostly about it at all, which she said was often stranger than any haunting. But Clara Merrin did not believe in ghost stories. Clara was 19, newly hired, and too practical to fear empty furniture. She had grown up in a laundry house, where hunger was more frightening than spirits and unpaid wages more dangerous than curses. Hawthorne Manor was her first grand post. She intended to keep it. So when the other maids warned her never to look inside the Rose drawing room after 9, she laughed. Not loudly, never loudly in a noble house, but enough. "Chairs do not frighten me," she said. The scullery maid, Bess, looked at her as though she had just insulted the dead. "You are new. New girls always say foolish things. I have seen worse than velvet. Not that velvet." Clara rolled her eyes. But 3 nights later she stopped laughing. It happened during a storm. Rain struck the windows hard enough to make the old manor creak. Wind moved beneath doors. Somewhere in the roof, loose tiles rattled like teeth. Most of the household had retired early because Lord Hawthorne was away in London, and when the master was absent, the house seemed to breathe differently, freer and more afraid. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Aldrin prepared the tea himself. He did not allow any maid to touch it. Clara saw him from the servant passage, measuring the leaves with the care of a priest preparing communion. He was an old man, tall and thin, with silver hair, black gloves, and eyes so pale they seemed faded by secrets. He had served Hawthorne Manor for 40 years. Some said he had been born in the pantry and would be buried beneath the wine cellar. He lifted the tray, walked the corridor, entered the Rose drawing room. "Your tea, my lady," he said. The door closed. 1 minute passed. 2, 3. Then Mr. Aldrin came out, empty-handed. No. The tray still held the cup, untouched. That was normal. What was not normal was his face. The butler was pale, not servant pale, not tired pale, dead pale. Clara noticed because she was carrying folded linen across the opposite hall. Their eyes met. For 1 second, the old man looked at her as if he wanted to warn her. Then the expression disappeared. "Miss Merrin," he said, voice perfectly controlled. "Return to your duties." "Yes, Mr. Aldrin." But as he passed, Clara saw the cup. The tea inside was still full, except something floated on its surface. A single rose petal. Black. Clara stopped. There were no black roses in Hawthorne Manor. The next morning, the house changed. No announcement was made. No one explained anything. But the servants felt it. Mr. Aldrin ordered the Rose drawing room locked during the day. The housekeeper, Mrs. Pike, began counting silver twice instead of once. 2 footmen were sent to the attic and returned carrying a long covered frame, which was immediately taken into the locked room. When Clara asked Bess what was happening, Bess crossed herself. She has noticed us again. Who? Bess leaned closer. The empty chair. Clara stared at her. That is ridiculous. Then, why do you look frightened? Clara had no answer. That evening, Lord Hawthorne returned from London. He was not what Clara expected. She had imagined a grey, severe old nobleman with a cane and a cruel mouth. Instead, Lord Dorian Hawthorne was 32, dark-haired, elegant and quiet, in a way that made every room arrange itself around him. He had inherited the estate after his father's sudden death, 2 years earlier. Since then, he had spent more time away than home, which the servants understood to mean he disliked the house, or feared it. When he entered the main hall, Mr. Aldrin stood waiting. For the first time since Clara had arrived, she saw the butler hesitate. Only half a breath. Lord Dorian noticed. "What is it?" Mr. Aldrin bowed. "Nothing, my lord. Nothing has never troubled you before." The butler looked toward the east corridor. Lord Dorian followed his gaze. His face tightened. "No, I am afraid so. What happened, Mr.?" Aldrin's voice lowered. The tea was returned with a petal. Every servant nearby went still. Lord Dorian's expression changed. Grief first, then fear, then anger. Clara saw it clearly because she was standing too close with a basket of towels and no good excuse to be there. Lord Dorian looked at Mr. Aldrin. "Who knows? No one who matters." That stung Clara more than it should have. No one who matters. It meant servants. People who saw everything and were counted as nothing. Lord Dorian said, "Prepare the room tonight." Mr. Aldrin stiffened. "My lord, I said prepare it, but the agreement died with my father." "No, Mr." Aldrin said too quickly. The hall froze. A butler had contradicted his master. Lord Dorian's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Mr. Aldrin lowered his head. "Forgive me, my lord, but the damage was done." Clara understood then that the tea was not madness, not tradition, not grief. It was a message, and someone inside Hawthorne Manor had just answered it. That night, Clara could not sleep. At 5 minutes before 9, she slipped from the servants' stairs and hid behind the tapestry near the east corridor. She knew it was foolish. She knew discovery could cost her position. But curiosity had begun to feel like a hand on the back of her neck, pushing her toward the truth. At exactly 9, Mr. Aldrin appeared with the tray. This time, Lord Dorian followed him. The master of the house looked nothing like he had at supper. His face was drawn. His black coat was plain. He carried no candle, no weapon, only a small brass key. They entered the Rose drawing room together. The door remained slightly open. Clara moved closer. Inside, the room glowed with firelight. The velvet chair sat beside the hearth. Still empty, Mr. Aldrin placed the tea on the side table. Lord Dorian stood opposite the chair. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Lord Dorian said, "If you have come back, show yourself." Silence. The fire cracked. Rain tapped softly against the window. Then the teacup moved. Not much. Just a tiny shift on the saucer. Clara pressed a hand over her mouth. Mr. Aldrin whispered, "My lord." Lord Dorian did not move. "Who are you?" he asked. The chair remained empty. Then slowly, impossibly, the teacup lifted. No hand held it. No visible person sat there. But the cup rose from the saucer, tilted, and returned. A sip had been taken. Clara's breath stopped. Mr. Aldrin staggered backward. Lord Dorian went white. The cup settled on the saucer with a delicate click. Then a woman's voice spoke from the empty chair. Soft, faint, and terribly clear. "You should not have opened the grave." Clara ran. Not because she chose to, her body chose for her. She fled down the corridor, through the servant passage, into the linen room, and shut the door behind her, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. She had not imagined it. The cup had moved. The tea had been drunk. The empty chair had spoken. But worse than that, she had heard what the voice said. You should not have opened the grave. And at Hawthorne Manor, one grave had been opened that week. Clara had seen the gardener digging beyond the chapel wall. She had thought it was repairs. Now she understood. Someone had disturbed the dead. And by morning, the dead had answered. By sunrise, Hawthorne Manor wore silence like mourning cloth. No servant sang in the kitchen. No footman laughed in the pantry. No maid lingered near the east corridor. Even the clocks seemed to tick more carefully, as though afraid of being heard. Clara told herself she would say nothing. She had seen too much, heard too much. And servants who knew noble secrets rarely lived comfortable lives. But secrecy did not save her. Mr. Aldrin found her before breakfast. He was waiting outside the linen room, hands folded, black gloves spotless. Miss Merrin, he said, his lordship wishes to see you. Clara's stomach dropped. I have done something wrong. The butler's pale eyes did not blink. That remains to be determined. He led her to the library. Lord Dorian stood by the window, looking out toward the chapel grounds. He had not slept. Clara saw it in the shadow beneath his eyes and the stillness of his shoulders. Mr. Aldrin closed the door behind them. Lord Dorian turned. You were in the corridor last night. Clara lowered her head. Yes, my lord. Why? Any lie she gave would insult them both. I wanted to know why, Mr. Aldrin serves tea to an empty chair. And now? Her voice was quiet. Now I wish I had not. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lord Dorian did something unexpected. He pulled out a chair. Sit! Clara stared. Maids were not invited to sit in libraries. Not unless being dismissed kindly. I am fine, my lord. You are shaking. I can shake standing, Mr. Aldrin made a small choking sound that might have been horror. Lord Dorian's mouth almost moved. Almost. Sit, Miss Merrin. This time she obeyed. Lord Dorian remained standing. What did you hear? Clara swallowed. The cup moved. Someone drank. A woman spoke, Mr. Aldrin closed his eyes briefly. Lord Dorian asked, What did she say? Clara looked toward the window. You should not have opened the grave. The room chilled. Lord Dorian and Mr. Aldrin exchanged a look. Clara noticed, You did open a grave. Lord Dorian's eyes returned to her. That is not your concern. With respect, my lord, when empty chairs begin speaking, concern travels quickly. Mr. Aldrin stiffened. Miss Merrin. But Lord Dorian lifted one hand. No, she is not wrong. He walked to the desk and unlocked a drawer. From it, he withdrew a small bundle wrapped in black cloth. He unwrapped it. Inside lay a ring, a woman's ring. Gold, set with a small oval ruby. Clara felt something strange when she saw it. Not recognition. Not exactly. More like the body remembering a song the mind had forgotten. Lord Dorian watched her closely. You know this ring? No. Are you certain? She looked up sharply. Why would I know a dead woman's ring, Mr. Aldrin whispered. My lord, perhaps this is unwise. Lord Dorian ignored him. This ring was found 3 days ago in the grave of Lady Eveline Hawthorne. Clara frowned. Your mother? No. His voice changed. My father's second wife. That name did not appear in household conversation. Clara had heard of the late Lord Hawthorne's first wife, who had died giving birth to Dorian. She had heard of his mistresses, his temper, his debts, his cruelty, but never a second wife. Lord Dorian continued. Lady Evelyn lived in this house for 6 months. Then she died suddenly. Fever, they said. She was buried quickly. Her portrait was removed. Her rooms were locked. The rose drawing room? He nodded. Clara looked at Mr. Aldrin. And you served her tea. The butler's face tightened. Every evening at 9. She took Earl Grey with 2 drops of honey. Why continue after she died, Mr. Aldrin looked toward the floor. Because she asked me to. Clara stared. She asked you before she died? Yes. Why? Lord Dorian answered. Because she believed someone in this house meant to kill her. The library seemed smaller. Clara's hands tightened in her lap. And did someone? That is what I intend to find out, Mr. Aldrin said quietly. That is what your father forbade us to find out. Lord Dorian's face hardened. My father is dead, but his friends are not. That sentence carried more fear than any ghost story. Lord Dorian looked back at Clara. I had Eveline's grave opened because a letter arrived last week. He handed it to her. The paper was yellowed at the edges but recently delivered. The handwriting was elegant and slanted. When the tea is finally drunk, ask who was buried with the wrong name. Do not trust the man who kept the key. Do not trust the blood that calls itself innocent. And when the girl with my ring comes to the house, listen to her. Clara read the last line twice. The girl with my ring. She looked up slowly. I do not have her ring. Lord Dorian's gaze dropped to her throat. Clara froze. She wore a thin ribbon beneath her collar. On it hung the only thing she owned from childhood, a small plain gold ring, too tiny for an adult finger, worn smooth with age. She had forgotten it was visible. Her hand flew to it. Lord Dorian said softly, May I see it? No. The answer came too fast, too instinctive. The old fear rose inside her, though she did not know where from. Mr. Aldrin took one step forward. Miss Merrin. No, Dorian said, stopping him. Do not frighten her. That struck Clara. Not the command. The reason. She looked at the young lord, and for the first time saw not only authority but restraint. I have worn it since I was little, she said. My mother said it was my father's. Who was your mother? Mara Merrin. A washerwoman. Did she give birth to you? Clara stood so quickly the chair scraped. That is an ugly question. It may be an essential one. My mother raised me. That is not what I asked. Her face flushed with anger. Then perhaps your lordship should learn that not every question deserves an answer simply because a nobleman asks it. Mr. Aldrin looked horrified, but Lord Dorian did not. He looked almost ashamed. You are right, he said. Clara did not expect that. It disarmed her more than anger would have. Dorian lowered his voice. Forgive me. I have lived too long among people who answer from fear. Clara's fingers still gripped the ring. The room was quiet. Then the library door opened without a knock. A tall woman swept in. Lady Beatrice Vane, Lord Dorian's aunt. She was dressed in deep violet silk, her grey hair pinned beneath black lace, her face sharp with old beauty and older ambition. Her eyes moved from Dorian to Clara, then to the ring at Clara's throat. Something in her expression changed, only for a second, but Clara saw it. So did Dorian. Lady Beatrice smiled. How curious. A maid in the library before breakfast. Dorian's voice cooled. Good morning, Aunt. Is it? The servants are whispering that the dead have begun taking tea. I came to discover whether madness is now included in the household budget. Mr. Aldrin bowed stiffly. Lady Beatrice. She ignored him. Her eyes remained on Clara. What is your name, girl? Clara Merrin, my lady. Merrin. The name tasted unpleasant in her mouth. Where were you hired? From the agency in Bath. And before Bath? Clara lifted her chin. A laundry house. How touching. Dorian stepped in. That is enough. Lady Beatrice smiled at him. You always were protective of wounded creatures. It made you charming as a boy and foolish as a man. Her gaze dropped again to the ring. Then she said, far too casually, that trinket is unsuitable for a maid. Remove it. Clara's blood chilled, Dorian said. Why? Beatrice laughed lightly. Because it is impertinent. No, Dorian said. Why did you notice it? For the first time, Beatrice looked annoyed. You are tired, nephew, and you are afraid. The rooms went still. Lady Beatrice's face hardened. You should be careful opening old graves. Sometimes what climbs out is not truth, but disgrace. Then she turned and left. The door shut behind her. Clara whispered, "She knows the ring." Dorian nodded. "Yes, mister." Aldrin was pale again. "My lord, Lady Beatrice was the one who kept the key." Clara turned. "What key?" The butler looked at the young lord. Then, slowly, he reached into his waistcoat and removed a small black key. "The key to Lady Evelyn's private writing desk." Dorian stared. "You told me the desk was lost." "I lied." "Why?" Mr. Aldrin's voice broke for the first time. "Because your father ordered me to burn it." "I could not. But I feared what would happen if anyone opened it." Dorian took the key. "Where is the desk, mister?" Aldrin looked toward the east corridor. "In the Rose drawing room." At 9 that night, they entered the room together. Dorian, Mr. Aldrin, and Clara. The empty chair waited beside the fire. On the small table beside it sat a fresh cup of tea, untouched. Steam rose slowly. Clara stared at it. "Did you prepare that?" Mr. Aldrin's voice was thin. "No." Before anyone moved, the teacup shifted, then lifted. A sip was taken. Clara's breath caught. The cup lowered. The woman's voice came again from the empty chair. "Open the desk." Dorian's hand tightened around the black key. Mr. Aldrin began to tremble. Clara's ring grew suddenly cold against her skin. Dorian crossed the room and unlocked the old writing desk. Inside was a bundle of letters, a miniature portrait, and a child's blue ribbon. Clara saw the ribbon and nearly fell. She had dreamed of that ribbon all her life. Dorian opened the first letter. His face changed as he read. Then he looked at Clara. Not like a lord looking at a maid, like a man watching the dead return in a living face. "What?" Clara whispered. His voice was rough. "Lady Eveline had a daughter. The room spun, mister." Aldrin whispered. "No." Dorian turned the letter toward the firelight. "She wrote that the child was taken from her before dawn, declared dead, given to a washerwoman outside Bath." Clara stopped breathing. Dorian looked at the ring at her throat. "And the child was sent away wearing her father's ring." A soft sound escaped Clara. Not a word. Not a cry. Something smaller, broken. The empty chair creaked, as if someone unseen had shifted toward her. Then the voice whispered, "My daughter." The fire went out. By morning, the truth had become too large for the walls to hold. Lady Eveline Hawthorne had not died childless. Her baby had not died. The child had been stolen from the Rose drawing room 20 years earlier, carried through rain, and placed in the arms of a washerwoman named Mara Merrin. Clara had entered Hawthorne Manor as a servant, but she had been born inside it as a daughter, not Lord Dorian's sister. By blood, Lady Eveline had been his father's second wife, not his mother. But she was still a Hawthorne child-in-law, hidden because someone had decided her existence was inconvenient. The house did not know how to behave around her now. Servants who had shared bread with her yesterday now dropped their eyes. Footmen stared and then pretended not to. Mrs. Pike, the housekeeper, wept openly in the linen closet, claiming dust had attacked her eyes. But Clara felt no victory, only terror. Because if someone had taken her from her mother once, why would they not destroy her now? Lord Dorian acted quickly. He ordered the gates locked. He sent for the magistrate. He placed 2 trusted footmen outside Clara's room. He forbade Lady Beatrice from leaving the manor. And then he made one final order. "At 9 tonight, tea will be served in the great hall." Mr. Aldrin stared at him. "My lord? Not in the Rose drawing room, not in secret. In the great hall before every member of this household." Clara understood. "You want whoever fears the tea to see it." Dorian looked at her. "Yes, mister." Aldrin's voice trembled. "And if she comes?" Dorian's gaze moved toward the east corridor. "Then this time, everyone will hear her." The day passed like a held breath. Lady Beatrice did not appear at luncheon. At 4, a maid reported that her ladyship had burned papers in her fireplace. At 6, Mr. Hale found a sealed packet hidden behind a loose panel in the dowager sitting room. Inside were payments, a midwife's confession, a forged death notice, and one letter from the late Lord Hawthorne to his sister, Lady Beatrice. The child must not remain. Eveline grows suspicious. Aldrin knows too much, but he is sentimental and can be controlled. See that the girl disappears without scandal. No blood in the house. I have had enough screaming. Clara read the line 3 times. No blood in the house, as if removing a newborn from her mother was a matter of cleanliness. Dorian stood beside her, silent with rage. My father, he said, voice low, was a coward dressed as a lord. Clara's eyes burned. And your aunt? Worse, she survived him. At 9, the great hall filled. Servants lined one side. Family retainers and guests stood on the other. Lady Beatrice sat near the fire, expression cold, hands folded over her cane, as though she had chosen the gathering herself. Dorian stood at the head of the hall. Clara stood beside him, though she hated every eye on her. Mr. Aldrin entered carrying the silver tray. For 40 years he had served tea to secrecy. Tonight his hands shook. On the tray sat the porcelain cup, Earl Grey, 2 drops of honey, no milk, no sugar, too hot to drink at once. He placed it on a small table in front of the empty velvet chair they had brought from the Rose drawing room. The hall watched. Nothing happened. Lady Beatrice smiled faintly. This is absurd, no one answered. 1 minute passed, 2, 3. Clara's heart sank. Perhaps last night had been grief, madness, trickery. Perhaps the dead spoke only when hidden. Then the cup lifted. Gasps exploded across the hall. A maid screamed. A footman dropped a candle. Mr. Aldrin fell to his knees. The cup tilted. A sip was taken. Then it returned gently to the saucer. The empty chair creaked, and Lady Eveline's voice filled the hall. Beatrice. Lady Beatrice went white, not pale, white. Dorian stepped forward. Lady Eveline, who took your child? The hall seemed to stop breathing. The voice came softly. My husband ordered it. Dorian closed his eyes briefly. And who carried out the order? Silence. Then, his sister. Lady Beatrice stood suddenly. This is witchcraft, the voice sharpened. You wore blue that night. Beatrice froze. You told me the baby died. The old woman trembled now. You held my hand while they carried her away. Clara's breath broke. The invisible presence in the chair seemed to turn toward her. My child lived. Clara's knees nearly failed, but Dorian steadied her with one hand at her elbow. Not claiming, only keeping her upright. Lady Beatrice's mask cracked. I saved this family, she shouted. Eveline was nobody. A merchant's daughter, with pretty eyes and dangerous ambition. Her child would have inherited settlements, property, influence. She would have weakened Dorian's claim, divided the estate, invited scandal. Dorian's voice was cold. You stole an infant. I protected the bloodline. Clara looked at her then, really looked. This old woman had not hated her because she was a maid. She had hated her because she had once been a baby, powerful enough to frighten a family. Clara stepped forward. My mother died thinking I was dead. Beatrice's mouth trembled. Then cruelty returned, because cruelty often does when shame gets too close. She would have ruined you with affection. A sound moved through the hall. Horror, anger, disgust. Dorian nodded to the magistrate, who had been standing quietly in the shadows. You heard enough, the magistrate bowed. I did. Lady Beatrice tried to speak again, but no one listened now. That was the punishment she feared most. Not arrest, not disgrace, being unheard. The guards took her away as she cursed the household, the dead, and the living girl she had failed to erase.
When the doors closed behind her, the hall remained silent.
The cup on the table steamed gently. Then the voice spoke one last time. Clara. Clara covered her mouth. I am here. A faint warmth moved through the air like a hand brushing hair from a child's forehead. I know. Tears slipped down Clara's face. I do not remember you. No. The voice grew softer. But you came home. The cup trembled once, then became still. The fire flared bright. And the empty chair was empty again. Weeks passed. Hawthorne Manor changed slowly, the way old houses do when secrets are removed from their foundations. The rose drawing room was opened, the curtains were drawn. Lady Eveline's portrait was found in the attic and restored above the mantel. Mr. Aldrin stopped serving tea at 9. At first, the servants found this more unsettling than the ritual itself. What if she misses it? Bess, whispered Mr. Aldrin heard and said quietly, She has had what she waited for. Clara was not sent away. That surprised everyone except Dorian. The legal matters took time. There were documents, claims, settlements, questions of inheritance and legitimacy. But Dorian made one thing clear immediately. Clara would not return below stairs unless she chose it. She did not know what to do with freedom. For days, she woke before dawn, expecting orders. She folded her own gowns because ladies' maids made her uncomfortable. She still entered rooms quietly, still apologized when people looked at her too long. One afternoon, Dorian found her in the rose drawing room, standing beside the velvet chair. No tea, he asked. Clara smiled faintly. I thought about it. And I think she is done waiting. Dorian came to stand beside her. For 40 years, Aldrin served a promise no one else understood. Clara looked toward the old butler, visible through the open door, instructing a footman with his usual severe dignity. He loved her. Yes, Dorian said, in the only way permitted to men like him. Quietly, faithfully. Clara looked at him. And you? Why did you help me so quickly? He was silent for a moment, then said, Because my father built this house out of silence. I have spent years living inside it. When the silence finally spoke, I had no wish to make it beg. That answer stayed with her. Months later, when people told the story, they changed it. They said the butler served tea to his ghost. They said an empty chair drank. They said a dead lady accused her murderer before the whole household. All true. But Clara knew the deeper truth. The chair had never been empty. It had been occupied by grief, by love, by a mother's refusal to disappear, by a promise kept long after everyone powerful had decided the truth was buried safely. And the tea? The tea was not for the dead. Not really. It was a signal, a ritual, a question asked every night for 40 years. Are you still there? And one evening when the grave was opened, when the letters surfaced, when the stolen child came home without knowing she had returned, someone finally answered. Because some secrets rot beneath floors, some secrets poison bloodlines, some secrets haunt houses, but some secrets wait patiently beside the fire. Untouched cup after untouched cup, until the living become brave enough to ask who was never allowed to speak. And at Hawthorne Manor, the dead did not return for revenge alone. They returned for tea, they ruse. They returned for truth. They returned for the daughter who had been stolen from the empty chair.